Welcome back, everyone, to the Reboot Era, the podcast that's redefining what it means to bounce back after a layoff. Today, I'm joined by Austin Brown, a former director of product and corporate strategy who's been laid off not once, not twice, but 3 times. Instead of letting the cycle break him, he actually built something that breaks the cycle. Laid Off Launchpad, a support platform and community for navigating the emotional and structural chaos that comes with losing a job. We talk about the stigma of layoffs, the mental health toll on breadwinners, and the power of having a routine during uncertain times. If you've ever wondered what to do the day after your career gets flipped upside down, this episode is your launchpad.
Hi, I'm Austin. I have been laid off 3 times. This is the first start of my journey. That has been over the last 10 or so years, but alongside that, I had some pretty fun career growth in the corporate world. I worked my way up to director of product and director in corporate strategy. And with those upsides, we also had unfortunate layoffs. And so I've navigated the layoffs throughout those years. And what I found is that there is an unmet need in the marketplace in terms of how people navigate those layoffs. And so recently I started Laid Off Launchpad. It's a business to provide support for folks navigating the day-to-day with a better routine. So that's what I'm up to.
I want to talk all about your business that you've started and how it's going and what you're doing and how it's filling this gap. But before we get there, you were director level management before you got in your last layoff?
Yeah. So director at a large corporate and telco. And my job title was director of product management and development. And I had about 24 people reporting into me, over $800 million in overall responsibilities with all the promising signs of upward career trajectory.
And I like to call out, that level because a lot of people think that layoffs only impact them and they might be at a lower level, but it really plays no favorites. And anyone can be impacted by a layoff.
That's my experience. Yeah, there's, and I'll say, the air gets thinner at the top, right? There are fewer people in those echelons, and oftentimes they're a part of the decision. And so there can be some protective nature by being a part of the organizational strategy and the direction that kind of makes the judgment call on the layoff. However, I've seen it happen to all levels of an organization, upwards of the VP and senior VP level.
Yeah. And so 3 layoffs, you said, right?
Yep.
That's not, it's one is like, all right, I was the selected chosen one. 2 is like, maybe something's wrong. 3 is like, is this me or is it just corporate? Is this just what happens?
It feels like that, right? I'll say this: I've heard people with upwards of 6 or 7 layoffs, and so you wonder, where's the fault here? And I can somewhat look back and say objectively, one is very much an obvious circumstance that the business was downsizing, and that became very clear. Admittedly, I think that helps me process it because when you have a clear understanding of why the layoff happened, it really helps you move forward a bit easier. I've also been a part of a very political layoff, and that one feels much harder to understand because the signals aren't as clear. And so, I've been a part of 3, and none of them are fun. I'll say that, and none of them are timed well. I've been laid off before. Getting married, been laid off right as I had our first kid, right after we bought a house. So it's never a fun time to get laid off.
The worst times to get laid off, realistically.
Yeah.
So, if I was a listener and I met you and I was listening to your story, I think the big question I would have is like between layoff number 1 and layoff number 3, the most recent, what are like the biggest, I guess, lessons learned or like, what caused you to pivot your strategy after layoff number 3 that you didn't do this? New business that you have and after layoff number 1?
Yeah, it's a great question. I feel like layoff number 1 was a total shock to the system. By layoff number 3, I could somewhat embrace that this circumstance happened and move on to the next phase of life, right? And I hate to say you become numb to it or you become a little bit easier to process that news. But why I started this business, which we can talk more about, is I saw the problem actually after layoff number 2 and felt like I approached my layoff circumstance differently because I knew that structure and routine were very key to your productivity and your sense of fulfillment, your sense of direction. And so what I saw after each of my layoffs, which I was very fortunate. I don't know if your audience has benefited from getting some form of outplacement service, which large corporations typically try to help their people when they do this decision. Unfortunately, my experience with the outplacement wasn't of meaningful value. I felt like I got the resume writing tips. I got the career coach that tried to help give me a sense of direction. But what I found was that those programs didn't tell you how to navigate tomorrow. They didn't tell you how to approach the day-to-day. And so what I found is that I did approach the day-to-day very well. And my wife complimented me. She was like, you are incredibly structured. You know what you're doing. You know how to set your goals and how to stay focused on that routine. And that's what I felt like was missing from the marketplace. When people are laid off, that routine is immediately disrupted. And so how do you gain control back of that? And how do you focus on the structure that you own?
Yeah. And you saw a gap and you are now ideally filling that gap in with a business that is hopefully helpful to so many people. And I have one more question before we're going to jump into all of that, fun stuff that you're doing today. One thing I haven't asked the question to, I don't think anyone yet, is really about men's mental health. And even if it's not just men, it's that kind of top earner, breadwinner mental health that you have, because layoffs can feel so, detrimental to your life. And it's like, where do I go from here? So, I don't know your story. Austin and I met online on LinkedIn, and he was happy to be a guest on my podcast and talk about what he's doing. But, if you're the breadwinner, or, the financial impact that you were having on your family and bringing in money, did you cry? Did you have days where you just shut the bathroom door and you were like, I just head between the knees, and how am I going to get through this? Right.
I'll say this, being laid off is the ultimate emotional roller coaster. You can feel sad one day, you can feel mad the next day, you can feel anxiety about what to do next, you can feel liberated in that there is an opportunity to move forward, you can feel regret for staying at a company as long as you did. You can feel all these emotions. And so from a mental health standpoint, I think it's appropriate to feel all those emotions. And I absolutely did. And I fortunately had a very supporting wife who said, we're good. We'll get through this. We'll be fine. It's just a job. It's temporary. You're skilled. You'll find work. And so I think having a support system of people around you is really critical to navigating that emotional roller coaster. And again, I think that there is value in having a degree of self-confidence that this happened to me, not because of me. And I think that the laid off badge needs to be worn a little bit more proudly, because I think people still have a bit of a stigma around it. Again, and you asked the question, it's happened 3 times. Is there, a commonality? Me, right? But I think we have to step back and say layoffs are happening all over. And unfortunately, it seems more frequently. And so I think that we have to embrace that these are objective business decisions, and we can't take the emotions of that circumstance. Yes, we need to recognize the situation can be hard on us and own that and then move forward. But yeah, I definitely had my own, can I have 2 beers tonight? Because there was definitely some moments of concern and frustration.
Yes, I love that. And it's important to understand. I like what you said, layoffs happen to you, not because of you. It's not your fault. It just is something that happens in business. And I was talking to a friend on the phone the other day, actually yesterday, and he was saying, about his layoff. And I was like, they don't teach you this in business school. They never talk about how you could make $300,000 a year, and then the next year you got laid off and you made $90,000. And it's like, how did you prepare for that, right? And it's always about upward momentum, but it's not about how sometimes you have to take step backs, or there's unfortunate setbacks that happen. So I appreciate you shedding light on that little tip. I'm hoping to get some more people to add their little points of views there. But with this, you have laidofflaunchpad.co. And could you talk about first the journey? Why, you talked a little bit about why, but what was the thing that clicked that you said, I'm going to do it, not just I have this idea?
Yeah, and I'll say this. I am very conscious of how hard starting a business is. Out of college, I was a part of a bootstrap startup, late nights, long days. I always knew I was going to have a very high bar towards starting something. And what I found over those 3 layoffs is that, 1, it's a pretty isolating experience in terms of how do you navigate this. 2, nobody tells you how to do it. Back to your point of nobody prepares you for it. And what I found is that problem of the lack of structure and routine in our day-to-day going away immediately is a big problem that people underestimate. You have a 9-to-5 job that provided you structure, that provided you clarity around what you did, that provided you a sense of fulfillment. It provided you a social network, even if you weren't close friends with those people that you worked with. It provided some semblance of like community. It provides a sense of challenge and progress. It provides all these things. And I think when people underestimate the 9-to-5 going away in an instant, a lot of those things go with it. And so what I felt was that there is that missing daily structure. And as a very routine driven person, we're not on video, but there's tons of books next to me that show a lot of routine books, Atomic Habits, Tiny Habits, The Power of Habits. Like, I love these books that talk about behavior and talk about how we can construct a really productive day. And what I found is that nobody was applying this to the laid off journey. And so that is my sole focus. I don't want to help with resumes. I don't want to do career coaching. I don't want to do anything else besides help people define a better day-to-day structure during their job transition after being laid off. And I'm being very nuanced about it. Laid off is in the title. Laid off is meant to be who it is for. Sure, other job seekers could benefit from my resources and support. However, there is a nuance of being laid off. There is an emotional experience to it. There is a reactive nature that you're in with it. And I think that people who are laid off are trying to navigate things a little bit different than maybe the just standard job seeker. And so that is why I started Laid Off Launchpad. And I can talk about what we do and how we do it. But the origin story is seeing a problem that I saw, feeling like I had a personal connection to that problem, having been laid off a few times, really thriving with routine and seeing that other people thrive with routine and seeing that that was a missing piece in the marketplace. And so this is one of those business opportunities that I say I am meant for it. I think about it all day long. I am excited to help people. It's fulfilling, but I also see it needed in the world. And so I'm trying to do my part to help solve that problem as much as I can.
Yeah, it's a great story for why you created it. And although everyone else can't see you, I can see you. And the books, it's there, right? I can see your bookcase. I can't see all the books, but it looks like it's pretty filled out. My bookcase is not that filled out. So, if you're using those books to build this website and, the content that's on here, I think that's amazing. The website's very clean, right? I'm looking at it as we talk and, there's not a lot of lag and it's great. And it gives the overview of what you're doing. I don't feel like I'm looking at this being like, what's the point? I get it. The Monday boost, I like that. I have a question first. So could you tell us what is the Monday boost and also who's writing it? Like, is it you writing these and sending it out?
Yeah, it's a weekly newsletter. It's meant to be, I'll take a step back. Laid Off Launchpad is meant to help everybody. It can help people who have zero budget whatsoever and they need perspective and guidance to navigate on their own. That is done with a newsletter. There is a free downloadable guide that I'm hoping to build out a full library of free resources. There is a downloadable Google Sheet for job search tracking. Again, it's not meant to be a bells and whistles, platform with integrations, but hey, if you need a spreadsheet to do it, here's one. And then I've got these cohort programs, which you can talk about in a one-on-one program. So those are kind of the paid versions if you want a little bit more hands-on support. But back to the Monday Boost, it is meant to be a weekly newsletter to kick off your week. And I do that intentionally because I believe your routine, your structure should start on Monday morning. I think you have to treat this as a job. And so I've timed this newsletter to go out every Monday morning. It is me writing it. It's a long-form newsletter written essentially providing some form of a story that weaves in a key insight or point of view around how to navigate the laid off journey with some element of what to incorporate in your routine. And we can talk about the land routine framework, but those are the pillars of what I talk about and write about day in and day out.
And it's not super long, right? I think I saw it was like a 4-minute read roughly. Yeah. Pretty
couple
easy.
Minutes. Yeah.
Is it something that can be responded to, or is this just like pushed out and you read it type of thing?
You can respond to it. Yeah, it is possibly interactive. It is meant to be more of a reflection that helps inspire a thought or practical action for that week. And then ideally, people see that, okay, I can apply this insight to my job search. And it's meant to provide my own personal stories, my own personal narratives, my own observations, my ahas. Like, again, I've been director of strategy. I have a lot of thoughts about the domain of business strategy as a concept and how it applies to job searching. And so I'm like weaving in narratives and stories about how to incorporate these ideas into a job search that maybe people don't really talk about. Like I think job searching has become kind of a thing that people are trying to make more science than art. And I love that because people want it to be as easy to know how you can control the variables, but sometimes there is art to it. And so I'm trying to incorporate some of these ideas that I've learned or picked up along the way and share that in a weekly newsletter.
And that's great. I mean, I haven't read the newsletter yet, but I will subscribe to it so I can see what's on it because it sounds cool.
Forward you some copies.
Yeah, I'd love that. And, have you seen a progression of what you're sharing from the first newsletter that came out to the most recent newsletter that's come out?
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm super pumped about this recent newsletter edition that I shared because it felt like I nailed a narrative. I nailed the points and I nailed an aha that felt very, very untalked about in the world. And so, yeah, I am seeing my own progression in content, in writing, conveying a narrative, conveying an insight. And I'm thinking that this is my playground because I've always been considered an idea person, but now I'm trying to turn those ideas into really well-crafted narratives. And the newsletter is a force function for doing that well.
Yeah. So first you have the Monday boost. You can, when you're on this website, you can add your email address in and you get right away, you'll start getting every Monday an email that will come in with a newsletter giving you context and tips and tricks. Then you also have the free resources, which you alluded to. That's the 10-day plan, right? Of like how to jumpstart, how to get started, how to keep that routine. Is that accurate?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
There's the free resources is meant to be the starting point of if you have been laid off and you need a little bit of perspective to orient around your journey, or it's newer and you just want to get some grounding. It's a 15-page PDF that I worked pretty hard on. I didn't mean for it to be like a quick skim one-pager. It's meant to actually be a short-form guide to how do you navigate those first 10 days. So it has perspective and it has every day some like action items that you can do over 10 days. And so those first few days, if you've been laid off, are just orienting around what happened. It's processing the news. It's, frankly, taking some time to gather yourself. Again, your instinct is to get on LinkedIn right away and start applying, right? Or where's my resume? I need to like start. I say take a step back and pause, gather yourself, process the news, start to reflect on your narrative, try to kind of piece things together around what should I be doing day in and day out. And really, I only talk about like developing a daily routine until day 10. So those first like 5 or 6 days, you're just like putting some pieces together at a very easy pace so that you can then move forward much faster. And so that's the 10-day guide. And I've got a bunch of other ideas for guides or resources, but starting with that one, that felt like the best one to start with. And then, yeah, there's more to come on that too.
Good. I love this. So as I'm continuing to look through here, and I encourage everyone to hop on and just scroll through it. It will take you a couple minutes to look through this. It's really nicely put together. Do you only have the newsletter, or is it something that you're on YouTube and you're kind of reading it out, or even like a micro or nano podcast where like while I'm applying to jobs, I could just tune in to hearing Austin read me what this newsletter is?
Not yet. It's a good idea. I think I'm trying to contain my focus to doing one thing really well and then ideally expanding the delivery of that across different mediums. And so the newsletter felt like a great place to start. And then I'm posting on LinkedIn on a daily basis, sharing out these ideas, sharing these tips, sharing these resources, which might be a snippet from the newsletter or might be something else. Absolutely in the future, I've considered audio, I've considered video, I've considered different mediums to share this, but I know it's important to be able to sustain any effort for the long haul. Again, this is a long-term vision. I believe in this deep down, and I don't want to spread myself thin in the front end of trying to deliver a really high quality service to people and a really quality value. And, one of my first jobs was at the Chicago Tribune, and I was fortunate to be in the room with some high level leaders and part of the editors of the newspaper. And I'll never forget them saying that great content will always find a way. You will always find a way to be found. and the medium is kind of the secondary. And so I'm trying to really focus on great content with the newsletter, and know that I'm probably leaving people on the table by not having different mediums, but I can trust in the process and know that will come.
We love that. I'm here for the day that it's audio because I'm
Me too.
constantly reading.
I'm a podcast guy, listen to podcasts all the time, listen to audiobooks. I'm very much a multitask with audio in my ears at all times. But yeah, I think there's something inherently prompting about ideally reading this newsletter at your desk with your computer in front of you so that you start your week. And that's meant to be the point of the Monday Boost newsletter, is to be a starting point of getting your week started. I think that there's value in talking about my journey or talking about ideas in different formats, but the Monday Boost is meant to be a triggering event to starting your job search.
Yeah. Well, I love that. So for the free resources, you talked about this being more of a long-term, in 2028, people are still tuning in to the Laid Off Launchpad. Is this something that you're constantly looking at every quarter to refresh? Are these legacy documents that are out there and you don't have to change them ever?
Yeah, I think it's both. I think that there is ideally a library of free resources. And ideally this 10-day plan is the first one that has been created, but it is still relevant in 2028. At the same time, my goal for this year is to create a new free downloadable resource every month. And so, at the end of this year, I hope to have several already published in the form of a library that anybody could go in and download. And, I'm doing that slightly as a selfish reason, because I believe if I provide value in a free way, people will give me their email, which then helps me communicate to them on the Monday Boost. And so it's meant to be some form of an exchange, that I get their email so that they are subscribed to the newsletter. But I also think that provides value. And so I use the free resources as a way to deliver value, but I also use it as a way to reach more people.
Yeah. So the idea is cool. I think you've talked us through how it works, which is awesome, and why you built it. A lot of people who are going to listen to this, which I feel like is just my mom, but I'm going to act like a lot more people listen to this.
Sure.
So for the people who listen to this, for the people who, click through Laid Off Launchpad, the big question I think comes because we're all probably business professionals. Did you just do this in your free time? You don't make any money from it and you just have all this disposable income to be able to do this? Or how are you making money by doing something like this?
Well, we didn't get to the other parts of the business model, which is the virtual cohort support program and the one-on-one support program. And so I also recognized that if you want to go at it alone and you can do it with some free resources, go at it. I support you in whatever way I can. However, there is an audience out there that sees the value in having hands-on support, hands-on accountability, hands-on collaboration. And so I've got two programs for that. One is this virtual cohort program, which I can describe. It's 5 to 8 people together over a 12-week time frame, and we huddle for 1 hour once a week. And I am the facilitator of that call. And we talk about successes over the week. We talk about challenges that we're facing and what strategies we can use to navigate those challenges from the group. And then we hold each other accountable to our weekly routine. And so we haven't talked about the routine framework yet, but the cohort is based on this land routine. That is a very good program for somebody who values partnership, values community, values accountability, and sees the utility in having a weekly check-in with people who are in their like circumstance. Now I'll go one layer deeper. 5 to 8 people is very specific. I have been in roles where I have facilitated workshops, and I wear the badge of facilitator very strongly. I know how a good meeting feels. I know how a bad meeting feels. I know I can play the role of facilitator in these meetings where I make sure everybody gets a ton of value out of it. I bring people into the conversation that are maybe a little bit quiet. I ask people to, give some space if they are taking over the conversation. I prompt questions to bring people up that need to be engaged. The goal is that we're all in this together. 5 to 8 is a special number because less than 5, it doesn't feel as collaborative. More than 8, it feels like you're not getting enough of your own personal experience in it. And so that is a fixed program where it's over 12 weeks, it's meant to be 3 months. Ideally, you don't need it after 5 weeks. Ideally, you find a job. Ideally, you find a job faster than you would have otherwise. And either you can stay on board and keep with the program, keep with your crew, or you can drop, and that's totally fine. And then the kind of the upper tier, the upper echelon is the one-on-one program. And so that's kind of meant for the exec who maybe just values that one-on-one hands-on engagement and maybe has, a nice severance package to afford $1,000 a month. And I'll just go back. Right now, the virtual cohort program is only $150 for a 12-week program. And so I'm trying to make that pretty reasonable for anybody to join in. Over time, I see that price point going up as I get more and more cohorts off the ground. But I have paying customers. And so that's how, one, I am starting to make money. I'll answer your original question that I maybe avoided at the start. I was very fortunate in my last role to get a very nice severance package. That severance package essentially turned into my business runway. I was able to say, okay, if I'm going to start something, do it now. And so that's what gave me the courage to really make the leap into entrepreneurship. But I knew that there was a way to get traction quickly and help people in a way that provided mutual value. And that's why I do have paid programs, because I do think there is value in helping people in a more hands-on capacity, and people recognize that. So these two programs are kind of the main bread and butter today. And I've got tons of ideas for how does this work in the future. I think there's partnerships with employers, there's partnerships with outplacement firms, there's community platforms, there's more courses, there's education, there's audio, right? There's all these ways that this business could help people in this circumstance. But it's all around the very, very specific focus of helping people navigate their day-to-day with a better routine.
So with the job transition crew, that's the option where you're with 5 to 8 peers, right? It's a weekly group session. It goes for a 12-week program. It's $150, so it's about $12.50 per week if you were to join that, correct? And so in that, you're going to learn new strategies to nail the job search from crew week to week. It's collaborative though, right? So you could ask questions to other people on the calls if they land a job, ask for potentially referrals as you meet these people, and really network with a core little cohort of people.
Yeah, there's 3 main reasons somebody would join a cohort. One is a sense of community. When you get laid off, it can be pretty isolating. So I want to be with people that I get to know in a more hands-on and collaborative capacity. And so there is expanding your network with your community through this. 2 is better strategy. And so each week we do open the floor to what challenges are people facing this week. And that's an opportunity for you to say, I'm wrestling with this, or I'm preparing for that. How would you all help with that? And so that is a space for people to engage on better strategy. And then 3 is accountability. And I was having a conversation last week with someone who said, my problem is that I stay up too late. I realize that I'm up until 1 a.m. because I'm just like doing whatever. His problem is that he doesn't have a boss to show up to in the morning. And so he says he has no accountability to staying structured. And what I had shared with him is that the problem with job searching is that the feedback loop of our activities is long. Like finding a job is the only metric for success. But applying for jobs has no reward at the end of it. You just apply and then you do it again and then you do it again. And so is applying for 5 jobs enough? Is applying for 50 jobs enough? There is like a really hard intangible nature of the job search process. And so the delay of feedback on my performance, on my activity is really what's missing. And so it's easy to delay doing some of those things. And so that's where I think it's valuable to have accountability during this process, whether that's a friend who's going through it or a partner or a spouse or whatever. Find it in whatever way you can. But I think there's value in creating a structure where that's embedded into the program. And so we end every call with, what are we focusing on this week? How can we hold you accountable? And it's a bit of vulnerability to ask people to say, I need to work on this. And then we call them out. Okay, what's it going to take? What should we check in on next week? Because we're here to make sure that you stick to that plan.
Yeah, I think that accountability piece is huge. So hopefully that's helping a lot of people. Now with the job transition co-pilot, that's more the one-on-one, right? And it's weekly. Is that monthly, or how long does that span for?
Yeah, that's month to month. That's meant for somebody who has the budget to pay for $1,000 per month program. And really it's just one-on-one. I am here to hold you accountable. I'm here to be your collaboration partner. I'm here to share strategies. I'm here to be whatever role you need me to be. And some of your listeners might be thinking, is he a coach? And I don't characterize, or I don't identify with that term, because I do have respect for people who go through a process of becoming a certified coach. And I want to honor that respect and respect that profession. I am a support partner. I'm here to collaborate when you need it. I'm here to hold you accountable when you need it. I'm here to reinforce the ideas of a better daily job search routine. But the hands-on one-on-one maybe gives them a little bit more flexibility to say, hey, we can do this on Mondays, we can do this on Wednesdays, we can do this whenever. And it's a month-to-month program. And so, yeah, it's meant to be much more flexible for somebody who wants that flexibility.
Yeah, I love this. Both of these programs seem really awesome. Obviously, I would lean more toward the cohort because I feel like for me, that's something that would be amazing if I wasn't maybe as comfortable or didn't have a great network. But even if I did and I just wanted to meet more people to keep me accountable, I definitely can see the value that adds. Now, with this, is it only you as the facilitator right now? Or because I can imagine a world in which a lot of people have cohorts and there's only so much time in your week that you could be, a facilitator.
Yeah, that's the hope, right? That there are too many cohorts to facilitate. But at this point, I see a way that I can scale to a multitude of cohorts for the time being. Aspirationally, I see me working with so many people along this journey that inevitably I find people who would be a good facilitator for cohorts and who have been through that journey, who might want to do this fractionally on the side. So that's where I think I could scale this if, say, I need, more support, or if I don't have bandwidth to do cohorts all day long. But right now it's manageable. And so I'm juggling the act of selling these people, doing onboarding, doing emails, facilitation, doing follow-ups. And the one thing that I didn't mention is that part of the cohort experience is I also create a Slack channel for people to connect asynchronously. And so I see the value in having our weekly check-in, but then I also see the value of people having a space where they can chat their team or their cohort in between sessions. And so I'm also somewhat community facilitation in that regard, where I'm sharing ideas, sharing thoughts, and prompting conversation on that platform. Somebody from an earlier cohort yesterday chatted that she got a job. And so I'm like, comment at everyone, let's celebrate, this win. And so that my job is to also prompt the community in that way too.
Now, do you get put into an alumni, community afterwards?
Yeah, that's a vision that I have, is to create a broader, Laid Off Launchpad community that is part alumni network that still has this intimate connection and feeling with your kind of tight cohort, but then it has access to a broader community where you can maybe network with other people who have gone through that same experience. And then I think, again, aspirationally, I have some forum where anybody could join the Laid Off Launchpad network community at a free rate. And then there's kind of tiers with how that could work. I mean, that's ideas down the line. See that LinkedIn plays a really great role in conversation and ideas. But for a lot of people who are laid off, you're not sharing content every day. You're not talking about challenges every day. You're not confiding in people. And so I think that LinkedIn serves a purpose, but it doesn't really help with the community element of being laid off.
Yeah. And you broke up a little bit on that last part. So you're saying that LinkedIn, you can see the purpose of it, but it doesn't hold people as accountable and give them that structure daily. Yeah.
Partially, yes. And people who are on LinkedIn aren't finding laid off community members. They're not confiding in people. They're not getting that daily reaffirmation of their progress. They're not collaborating on strategy. And so there's value in LinkedIn, but it is in a different capacity for people than what I believe is missing, is a sense of community during that journey. So yeah, I see down the road Laid Off Launchpad having a much broader and more impactful community program, but I'm also conscious that that's going to take a lot of effort. And so I want to nail each program as it works and then scale as the business demands it.
Yeah. And you started this in January 2025, right? So just 7 months ago.
I officially, as an LLC, started January 2025, but I have been behind the scenes iterating, getting things off the ground, piloting programs, getting a lot of feedback, developing resources. I actually announced this last month, the first week of June. And so it's only been really live for a month, but I've been building for several months.
Well, congratulations, because I think it's amazing. And With such a short runway that you've had, I feel like you've answered all the questions. You've done all of the things. You've kind of been proactive about giving something, a product or a service that's really great for people to be able to utilize. And it sounds like you also have a backlog of items that you're like, I'm thinking about these things. I'm working on these things in the background on top of all of the cohorts that you have and the potential, higher level co-pilot that you have for executives.
Oh, thank you. It's been incredibly validating, at least putting it out into the world and seeing the response. I think people get it, which is the goal. You kind of shared some perspective that my website is very clear. And that is where a lot of work went, is making sure that the message was well articulated, because what I believe is that people don't consciously think about this problem until I say it out loud. And then when I say it out loud, they're like, oh my God, yes, you are describing how I feel better than I've ever even thought about it. And so my job, again, having been laid off 3 times, is to convey that experience in a relatable way, also providing a solution that isn't being served in the world. And again, no offense to all the resources out there to help people land jobs. I'm just trying to complement and help people with that day-to-day sense of fulfillment, sense of productivity, sense of purpose. And it really comes back to the routine. And so we can talk about the LAND routine is this framework that I created. And it stands for learn every day, apply every day, network every day, and defend your energy every day. And so that thread line of LAND is connected with a routine. And so my belief and what I'm putting into practice is that if we commit to a daily routine that has this 4-part structure, then we will be successful. We will be more productive. We will be more intentional. We will be more focused, and we will be able to sustain that journey because we have built in some rejuvenation practice to defend our energy. Now, LAND as a framework is not a breakthrough idea. Like when I say it out loud, people are like, yes, yeah, that's simple, right? It's not breakthrough ideas in terms of what we should be doing, but I think it gives people a sense of solidness in terms of how I should be structuring my days. And for me, that is the win, that Laid Off Launchpad provides some idea that people can apply with or without me. But if you're in the cohort or if you're in a one-on-one program, that is the cornerstone of what we work from. And so the LAND routine is meant to provide some guiding structure for how someone navigates their day-to-day job search.
And you created this, or this is something that existed prior? Okay.
Nope, I created it. It is meant to coincide with the brand of Laid Off Launchpad, and the LAND routine has its own double meaning there. But I created this myself, and it was based off of my own journey. Right, I knew I was very routine driven, and I didn't mention it, but I am a triathlete by hobby, and I have enjoyed lifestyle of routine. And what I realized is that when I was structuring my days while being laid off, I was doing these activities, but it didn't have a name to it. And so what I tried to do is reflect back on what was I doing that helped me land my next role. And it made sense that LAND is a very good acronym for what we're trying to do. And it gives a really easy sense of structure to remember. I need to learn every day, apply every day, network every day, and defend your energy every day. Now, each of those pillars might be done at a different, level or capacity or schedule. Like I'm not being prescriptive that you have to wake up at 4 a.m. and, knock this out over 10 hours. It is meant to be consistency over intensity. It's meant to provide a structure of doing the right activities on a continual basis and making it simple enough that you can do it. But it is meant to be, hey, we need to create the structure around our job search. And that is it.
Yeah. I love this whole thing. And I think you as the face of it is awesome. So, thanks for doing something like this. That's it for today's episode. Huge thank you to Austin for sharing such a thoughtful, vulnerable, and strategic take on the layoff journey. If you're navigating a job loss or want to be better prepared for one if it ever comes, head to the layofflaunchpad.co to download his free 10-day guide, subscribe to the Monday Boost newsletter, or join his virtual cohort for community, structure, and accountability. You can also follow Austin on LinkedIn, where he posts daily reflections, insights, and support for job seekers. All links are in the show notes. Until next time, keep showing up, keep building, and keep rebooting.